Well, thank you all for joining us today. We're going to have an informative panel here today that are going to answer your questions that you have on COVID-19. There's been a lot of new information from both the governor's office as well as Jefferson County. And there's more federal stimulus bills coming on the horizon as well. And we have people who are going to talk about that. We have a great lineup of guests here to inform you and answer your questions. So if you are using the Zoom app, find the Q&A panel that's up at the start. Open that up and start your questions. So if you have any questions specifically, go ahead and get started on those now. If you're not using the Zoom app, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to take your questions. So if you are on the phone and you can log into the Zoom app, you'll have your questions answered. I want to remind you that the questions should be respectful and courteous, and any questions with profanity or hate speech will likely be dismissed. So we only have time to answer serious questions here, and we appreciate your help on that. I'll introduce our panelists first, and after I'm finished introducing the panelists in the order I introduced them, they will have about 5 minutes each to give us a little update on what they've been working on. And today we have our Congressman from District 7, Ed Perlmutter. We have Colorado's Attorney General, Phil Weiser. We also have District 3 County Commissioner from Jefferson County, Lesley Dahlkemper. And to answer your questions pertaining to labor, we have Jeff Fitzgerald. And we also have Saphia Elfituri, Public Affairs Manager with Connect for Health Colorado. So as I mentioned before, get your questions started in the Q&A window now, and we'll get started with Congressman Perlmutter. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Representative Titone. Thanks for inviting me to participate in your town hall. And I'll just be quick and hopefully we get lots of questions, but I just came back from Washington yesterday, or I guess late Thursday night, where we had passed another piece of legislation to assist us as a nation with stabilizing the economy, but also providing for additional resources for public health, for hospitals and for testing. Obviously, this pandemic has been a body blow medically and a body blow to the country economically. And we were caught a little bit flat-footed, and I would say from the White House particularly on down, but we're catching up with tests, with gear, with ventilators, with equipment to deal with this really contagious virus, and also working and placed a lot of money in research for vaccines and for medicines to treat people who contract this disease. The country has more or less been shut down now for 5 or 6 weeks, and a number of places, including Colorado, we're going to be pretty much closed for a couple more weeks. And I know you can talk, Representative Titone, about the governor's safer at home, and I'm happy to address that as it comes up, but it's obviously affected the economy in a dramatic way. A lot of people left off. I know we have Jeff Fitzgerald from the Department of Labor to talk about the unemployment numbers, but economically very, very difficult. And we've put a lot of money behind small business loans and disaster grants, a lot of money into the unemployment compensation category. We passed economic injury payments so that individuals who make $75,000 or less, or a family making $150,000 or less, each get $1,200 check plus $500 for any children, as a way to try to keep the economy going while we're in this medical emergency, which we hope we'll be able to come out of this emergency over the next few weeks, few months, not have another outbreak of the coronavirus, but to have some money so that we can put the economy back together. There will be one more big package, or maybe several more, but certainly one more that we're working on right now, which will, the prior packages have been to deal with the medical emergency and to try to stabilize the economy. This next one will be more stimulative. Big construction component for infrastructure, for rebuilding our roads and bridges, our waterworks, our electrical grid and broadband, as well as providing some substantial assistance to state and local governments so that they don't have to lay off firefighters and police and snowplow drivers and teachers. That's a very big part of what we're working on right now. So I'd like to take questions. I just appreciate our community's willingness to really respect social distancing, and it's helped us start to get our arms around the effects of this terrible virus. I turn it back to you, Representative Titone.
Thank you, Congressman Perlmutter. Let's move now to Attorney General Phil Weiser. Give us a little update on what's been going on and what you see on the horizon.
Representative Titone, thank you for your leadership. This is not an easy time for us here in Colorado or anywhere in the United States, and it's testing us. What I would say is our office has had to pivot, and this has been a real challenge because we're doing it all remotely, and we're now taking on challenges like coronavirus-related scams, people who are marketing tests or cures that don't exist. We're also taking on price gouging, something that we're seeing where opportunistic sellers marking products up as much as 800%, which is just wrong. And then also, obviously, public health orders. We're still managing a situation where we want to keep people safe at home. We're going to transition statewide to what our governor's called safer at home, which means please be smart, use social distancing, don't go out where you don't need to. This is a challenging time. What I want to say also is that there are going to be some long-term benefits. And we got a question that Brian posed and I gave an answer, including an op-ed I did in the Grand Junction Sentinel, which is we are seeing technologies being used to provide resilience, from 3D printing of PPE to broadband for telemedicine and online learning. So happy to hear about Representative Perlmutter's commitment to broadband in a stimulus bill. Let me put that finally. If people are doing online learning and don't have broadband, they're not learning, which reinforces the gap between people who basically aren't as well off, who already are suffering a real equity gap vis-a-vis other people. And to have that reinforced by a lack of broadband pains me. And we can and need to do better here in Colorado. And I'm excited to work with you, Congressman, on that important front. And then I also just echo what the Congressman said about the economic challenge. And in our office, we are looking out for people, standing up for student loan borrowers. Just announced a package this week to provide some more grace on that front for some. We're looking out about evictions and pushing courts not to take evictions during this time. We have to recognize there's a lot of pain right now, and we need to be there and support each other. This is going to test us. I absolutely believe we're going to get through this, and we'll get through it with leaders like the ones, frankly, here. In Jefferson County, you've got some great commissioners like Lesley, who's going to speak in a minute, and we all have to work together. So thank you, Representative Titone, for having this town hall and giving us a chance to share information. I look forward to questions as well.
All right. Thank you, Attorney General. Commissioner Dahlkemper, we've had a couple different things come up recently in Jefferson County, new public health order. Glad you're here to answer those questions for people. Go ahead and give us your 5 minutes.
You bet. Thanks so much, Representative Titone, for the invite to join you. Thanks to everyone who's joining us via Facebook Live. We see your questions starting to come in. Michelle, I can take your question about Weld County and working with your local county commissioners in just a moment. I also want to give a special shout out to Representative Titone, who has been on every briefing involving our Jeffco area legislators that the county commissioners have held. Thank you for your engagement. Huge thanks to Congressman Perlmutter for everything that you're doing at the federal level to help us here at home, and our AG Phil Weiser. Can't thank you enough. for all that you're doing as well. I'm Jeffco Commissioner Lesley Dahlkemper. I'm also the board chair of the County Commissioners. And I wanted to share two updates. I know the stay-at-home order and the extension of that order is an issue on all of our minds. I'll go to that in just a moment. But first, I just wanted to share an update with you about where we're at in Jeffco with COVID-19 cases. As of today, we've had a total of about 1,200, little more than 1,200 cases of COVID-19 in Jeffco. And sadly, 61 Jeffco residents have passed away from this virus, and about 260, little more than that, have been hospitalized. The good news in all of this is that since the start of the outbreak, more than 74% of individuals with COVID-19 in Jeffco have recovered, and that's positive news. If you're interested in learning more about the data related to COVID-19 in Jefferson County, we update those numbers daily at jeffco.us. You'll see a pop-up box for COVID-19 information. Click on that. There's lots of good information and resources, and we can talk about that a little bit later in the call as well. Let me also share a little bit more about the stay-at-home order, why it was extended, and why we felt it was so important to also do that in conjunction with other metro area counties. Jeffco Public Health is the lead agency for the county on the COVID-19 pandemic, and it's tracking local data to determine the best way to reopen the economy while also keeping our public safe. And as you may know, the governor left the decision to counties. And I think this is really important to underscore, because I think this message got a little bit lost. And I know there are a lot of moving parts that can be confusing for everyone, but the governor left the decision to counties if data call for further extension of the stay-at-home order. Also, state statute gives this decision authority to the public health director, and Dr. Johnson, who is our public health director for Jeffco, also works in close collaboration with our emergency operations center, the county commissioners, and other county leaders as well. So after studying current trends, public health officials in the metro area decided to extend the stay-at-home order through May 8th, because we're still experiencing high numbers of people who are sick with COVID-19. And one of the most common questions I and Dr. Johnson, other commissioners have been asked is, why extend the order? Didn't the governor lift it? Why is there a difference at the state level and at the county level? So we touched on that a little bit, but there's some other reasons for this. One of the key pieces of data that we're looking at is to see whether we're seeing a decline over a 14-day period in those daily cases. We have not yet seen that decline. And if you go to jeffco.us, you can see some of those graphs that show an increase from day to day. The other challenge that we're facing is testing capability, and that continues to be a challenge. There is insufficient testing, and that's one of the issues that I know we're all working on together from the federal level, local level, and statewide. The other issue is Jeffco Public Health requires additional time, and this is related to testing results, to really home in on containment, hotspots, monitoring, and more. The other thing that we felt was important is moving together as a region, so we have consistent guidelines. We know how important that is for businesses, for residents, because of some of the mixed messages or confusion around communications. And again, the main reason is those number of cases are not where we need them to be just yet. There's only one difference in this stay-at-home order versus what we were previously, and it's also good news. Non-critical businesses, small retail shops, boutiques like the ones in Old Town Arvada and elsewhere can open up for curbside service. So we can talk more about other ways we can help you if you're a business, if you're a resident, if you're a community member in need of housing assistance, medical assistance, food assistance, and more. But I'll go ahead and stop there. And thanks.
I think it's important to have the people on the front lines of these decisions being here to answer the questions that people have. We'll go next to Jeff Fitzgerald. He's with Colorado Department of Labor and Employment. And Jeff, go ahead and tell us a little bit about what's going on over there.
Thank you, Representative Titone. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. I thought I'd talk a little bit about what we've seen in the first 5 weeks of since the crisis hit, and then talk a little bit about the CARES Act and the further legislation that broadens eligibility for unemployment assistance. So really, since the pandemic hit, and it has caused an unprecedented yet completely understandable demand for unemployment insurance benefits. Moving from a state unemployment rate of about 2.5% to almost immediately that being no longer the case. It created some initial challenges. I'm happy to report that my team has worked hard to work through those challenges. So through April 18th, the first 5 weeks since the crisis, happy to report about 300,000 people have applied for successfully unemployment insurance benefits, and we've managed to pay out $183 million to those citizens, desperately needed, of course, to pay rent and put food on the table. So happy that we've worked through that. We're now talk a little bit about the CARES Act, which really includes a few different provisions. The ones I'll highlight today are called pandemic unemployment compensation. That is what's typically known as the additional $600 weekly that gets added to every single benefit, regardless of your underlying benefit. I want to underscore that this $600 is a flat fee. There's nothing more you need to do to get it. It's just simply added to your base benefit, regardless of which benefit you are receiving. So that benefit was actually made retroactive back to March 29th, and that benefit extends through July 25th. Happy to report that this past week, we paid out to more than 200,000 people the first 3 weeks going back to March 29th for those to whom it applied. We paid back out that $600 weekly benefit. So those should be in bank accounts now. That added an additional $203 million to the economy. So happy that we've gotten those out. Those will continue to benefits. Nothing more you do. The second part of legislation I'll talk about, which I'm sure is of interest, is pandemic unemployment assistance. This is a new category of benefits funded by the federal government, as is the pandemic unemployment compensation. This makes benefits available to folks that have traditionally not been eligible for benefits, including those that are independent workers, independent contractors, self-employed, and even those perhaps that have exhausted regular unemployment insurance. Those benefits are actually retroactive to February 2nd for those whom that timeline applies. So if you had your wages impacted going back as far back as February 2nd, you can retroactively claim for those benefits going back that far. And those benefits currently extend through December. So since the legislation passed, we got guidance a few weeks later from the from US DOL, Department of Labor, and for the past 2 weeks we've been programming to stand up that system. Happy to announce that system launched on Monday, and we have had through this week about 60,000 people apply for those benefits, and as of last night we paid out $70 million to that group for retroactive weeks. So happy that that's progressing well. We continue to tweak that system as we are encountering new developments. It's a brand new system, so there's some elements we didn't quite expect. And we're continuing to question that has been asked before I turn it over. There's been some questions about pandemic unemployment assistance because some folks understandably work in both 1099 or independent contractor work, as well as they work as traditional employees, which are called W-2 employees. And so there's been some confusion that I want to address right away, and that is that if for those category of workers who have dual incomes or dual earnings, if you will, we are required to process the benefit under regular unemployment insurance. So if you have earned in the last 18 months $2,500 or more in what's called the base period of W-2 earnings, by necessity and by federal guidelines, we have to process that claim under regular unemployment insurance. We've done our best within the online messaging to clarify which category of benefit folks should be to which category they should apply for benefits. We'll continue to tweak that as we see them. Last thing I'll end on is the best means to get information from us, given the overwhelming demand, is going to be the website and via our online services. We continue to expand the call center. We've actually hired a third party to specifically answer questions on pandemic unemployment assistance, given the new demand there. And we will continue to expand the means in which we have kind of customer interaction, given I know there are challenges in reaching our customer call center. So we're going to continue to tweak that to best serve our customers. That's it, and look forward to your questions.
All right. Thanks very much, Jeff. Our last panelist is Saphia Elfituri. Did I say that right? She is with Connect for Health Colorado, and she's going to tell you a little bit about obtaining health insurance, probably, on the exchange.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Representative Titone, for hosting this event and for having me here today. I really appreciate it. So for those of you that don't know, Connect for Health Colorado is the state-based health insurance exchange where you can apply for financial help to pay for your monthly premiums as well as lower your out-of-pocket costs. Typically, people who shop through Connect for Health Colorado don't qualify for Medicaid, Medicare, or job-based health insurance coverage. We have opened an emergency special enrollment period in response to COVID-19 that is currently going on. So anyone who is uninsured at the moment is given the opportunity to enroll in health insurance through Connect for Health Colorado, and that special enrollment period will close on April 30th. So if you are currently uninsured, make sure that you take advantage of this special enrollment period and enroll, again, by April 30th for coverage that will start on May 1st. If you do not sign up for health insurance through this particular special enrollment period, you won't be able to do so unless you have another qualifying life change event, such as losing coverage through your job, getting married, having a baby, moving, and several others. So I really urge you to take advantage of this current special enrollment period to make sure that you get coverage for yourself and your family. What I will say is that this past week, we saw a little bit over 10,000 people enroll through this special enrollment period. So it started on March 30th, March 20th, and as of this week, we had 10,000 people. So we're really pleased with that number and pleased to see that people were really taking advantage of this time to get themselves covered. Another thing that I wanted to talk about is the financial help that's available through Connect for Health Colorado. So depending on your income and household size and a couple of other factors, there are two forms of financial help that are designed to help pay for your health insurance. So one of them is a premium tax credit, and what that does is it lowers your monthly premium that you pay every month. The other form of financial help is called the cost sharing reduction, and that helps with your out-of-pocket costs. So your co-pays, your deductibles, co-insurance, things like that. The other important thing about coverage through the exchange is that all of the health insurance companies are required to cover COVID diagnostic testing. So that means that you don't have to pay a copay or pay towards a deductible. You can get that service free of charge for yourself. The other thing that I want to highlight is that we have a statewide network of brokers and assisters who can help you apply for the financial assistance that I spoke about, as well as enroll in a health insurance plan free of charge to you. And they are all offering virtual assistance currently. And to access that, you can visit our website at connectforhealthco.com and click on the Get Help button, and then all you have to do is type in your zip code, and a list of assisters and brokers in your area will appear for you there. So once again, thank you, Representative Titone, for hosting today, and I'm happy to take questions.
All right, thank you, Saphia, and thank you all panelists for being here. Just to remind people online, the questions can come through on the Q&A panel in the Zoom, and also on the Facebook Live. If you post it on the Facebook Live in my Facebook page, we will get to those questions as well for those of you who may not be in the Zoom call and have access to the Q&A panel. So we're going to take some questions now. I'm going to have Michelle, my legislative aide, She's going to read the questions out and direct them to the panelists. If their question is specifically to a panelist, she'll say that. If it's just an open-ended question for whoever, please jump in and answer the question as you see fit. So I'll turn it over to Michelle to get some of those questions that she sees.
Excellent. Thank you, Representative. So the first question we have is from Mindy in Arvada, and this is for Congressman Perlmutter. She's wondering if you see any positive movement for a national mail-in election in November 2020, and is there anything citizens can do to help move the country to that, like Colorado already has?
There is movement and there is resistance. This next bill, we in the House have, as part of the prior packages, tried to do a couple things: provide for national mail-in balloting, and to also help underwrite the post office because it, just like about everything else, is getting hit by COVID-19 and the economic consequences of COVID-19. So it is definitely a topic of conversation. I think there will be a battle about it and for it as we get to this next piece of legislation. The president has been very resistant to it, as have some Senate Republicans. And so I'd suggest you call our Senator Cory Gardner and Senator Michael Bennet and let them know how you feel about the national balloting. And I think obviously that is so important. Time is slipping away, so we need to get it into this next package. And I know that that's going to be one of the very contentious pieces of the package, but you can bet there are a lot of people fighting for it, including me. So thank you for that question.
All right, our next question is for the Attorney General. Brian is asking, as an entrepreneur running my own small business, I wouldn't be able to survive without the support of digital tools provided by technology companies, particularly during this outbreak. I'm sure that many of my fellow Coloradans here today would agree. When we come out of this situation, will you be working to support the technologies that have helped grow Colorado and keep small businesses like mine running before and during the pandemic?
Brian, thank you for that. And I want to commend Representative Titone for her great leadership on broadband issues. This is an area that she's got deep expertise on. I will be working with her and Congressman Perlmutter and county commissioners like Commissioner Dahlkemper and others. Broadband is not an optional nice to have. It is an essential service that enables these digital tools. So whether you're talking about people working remotely, conferences like this on Zoom, or even online learning, broadband is essential. So one incredibly important point here is make sure we're getting both ubiquitous access as well as the ability to adopt broadband and in some cases digital devices, whether they be smartphones or laptop computers, so that we have everyone getting the opportunities. Your point is super important. We are seeing adoption of these technologies, use of them, creative ways. We need to find the learnings from this experience and build on them long term. That will make us stronger. That will help us be more resilient going forward. We have been remarkably resilient. It is a testament to the American and Colorado spirit, and there's room for improvement and growth here too. So fabulous point, absolutely. Feel free to follow up with me, and I know Representative Titone and others, how we continue that learning and how we provide that continued access to key digital tools.
Yeah, and I just wanted to chime in real quick. I'm running a bill with the speaker. We're going to introduce a bill on broadband to make a few changes to the Broadband Deployment Board to make it a little bit easier and streamline the process for getting those grants out, because we have a lot of money sitting there that's not being used. And we're hoping also that some of the federal money that's coming down on broadband, we can also put into that pot to distribute for broadband. So Michelle, why don't you get to the next question, please?
Sure. This one's for Saphia. If an individual was recently laid off and is losing their health insurance, what would be their options through the exchange, COBRA, or applying for Medicaid? If someone made too much money in 2019 to qualify for subsidies, will they still be ineligible if they apply now?
That's a great question. Thank you for it. So yes, there are several different options. I'll start with the COBRA option. So an individual does usually have the option to continue with their employer coverage through COBRA. The downside about that, though, is that the individual will be responsible usually for the full premium amount. So typically with employer-sponsored coverage, your employer pays most of your monthly premium and then you just pay a portion. But with COBRA, you are on the hook for all of the premium for the most part. There are cases where employers will subsidize for a period of time. So that's one option. If you choose not to take your COBRA coverage, the Medicaid program could be another option depending on what your income is. So it's based on your current monthly income. And what I wanted to highlight about the pandemic unemployment insurance, so that additional $600 that's being added to the traditional unemployment does not count as income for the Medicaid program. So that could be an option for you. And then if you don't qualify for the Medicaid program, then you can apply for coverage through Connect for Health Colorado and apply for that financial assistance that I spoke about earlier today. So there are those three different options for you. The question about the 2019 income. So once again, for the Medicaid program, they look at what your current monthly income is. So what your income coming in for this month. For the Connect for Health Colorado financial assistance, we look at your annual income for the year during which you are receiving coverage. So if you apply today, we are looking at what your overall 2020 income is expected to look like. So you do have to project your income, and you do have the opportunity to adjust it as time goes on throughout the year and as your income changes. Yeah, and once again, I think that the other thing that I would like to highlight about COBRA is once you do choose to take COBRA health insurance, you have to stay on that health insurance and cannot get a special enrollment period through Connect for Health Colorado once you have done so. So we consider that a voluntary loss of coverage rather than an involuntary loss of coverage. So just make sure that you weigh your options, what's best for you and your family, and we do have brokers that can help you do that for free as well. Thank you for the question.
All right. So the next question we have is for Congressman Perlmutter. Can you provide more details about what we might see in the fourth relief package? Will we see stimulus provisions such as infrastructure, or will it be more of a relief package?
I think great question. I think it's going to be a combination of both. So there will be relief, or what I call stabilizing elements to it. And one of those big stabilizing elements will be assistance to state governments and local governments who are going to see their revenues drop dramatically as a result of this pandemic and the way we've had to shut down parts of the economy over the course of the last 2 months. So there will be a big shortfall in revenue for Colorado, a big shortfall in revenue for various city and Jefferson County type activities. And so we want to make sure that at a time where we can least afford it, they don't lay off firefighters and snowplow, well, I guess in the summer we don't need the snowplow drivers, but people working in the transportation departments or the utility departments or in human services or anything like that. This is a key time where government, particularly local and state government, is key to how we get through this mess. And so there'll be a big chunk for that. That'll be a stabilizing component. There will be a big piece for infrastructure, so to stimulate the economy. And I talked about a little earlier, roads and bridges, electrical grid. We'll be doing broadband and waterworks. So many cities and local areas around the country have very old and dilapidated water systems that need to be rebuilt. So put a lot of people to work, be good investments for the future. I expect there will be some additional public health pieces to it, probably rebuild some of the supply chains that we offshored on gear and equipment and pharmaceuticals. So it's going to be a very, very big package, but we need it because what we found through this is our economy is much bigger than we thought. America is much more productive than we gave it credit for. And so as a consequence, we need to step in, kind of get things back, not to normal, because I don't think we're going to return to normal for a while and it's going to be a new normal, but to really put people back to work who've lost their jobs in one way or another and get the demand back in the system so that our economy begins to emerge from this thing over the course of the next year to 2 years.
And that perfectly leads us into a follow-up question about what's happening on the local level. So this is probably for Representative Titone and Commissioner Dahlkemper. What legislation might we see come from the state level? And then what solutions are there to address the looming state revenue decreasing and looming spending cuts, especially in regards to education?
Yeah, it's, I mean, our budget is looking to be cut probably by close to 25% of our revenue that we had for last year. So just for the general fund. So, I mean, you think about what we did in 2019, we have to cut that by a quarter. I mean, it's a huge amount. So we're going to be cutting pretty much everything. Everything is going to have some kind of cut. And it's very, very, very difficult. The Joint Budget Committee is under a lot of stress and pressure, and just it's very emotional to have to cut programs that are really helping people and growing our state in a positive way. So a lot of the legislation that we're going to be looking at when we get back into the Capitol is going to be around changing things that we have done in the past that spent money to reverse some of those things. And we're going to have to all think about making cuts and what that's going to look like. Everyone's going to be affected by this. But we're focused mainly on the legislation that are going to be focused on the COVID relief type things, things that are going to help in the efforts to make things better. One of my bills is the right to repair, and it was a very broad topic. We're paring that back to focus on medical devices for right now. We think that that's going to help the hospitals deal with the issues that they have with their manufacturers not letting them fix their own things. Instead of the other devices, we're going to just focus on that just to get it through very quickly. These are the kinds of things that we're going to be working on, employment things, productivity, giving people the ability to work from home. Obviously, broadband was already discussed. But we're all going to have to take a little bit of a hit on this, and unfortunately, that's the reality. But I'll let Commissioner Dahlkemper talk a little bit about the county as well in this case.
Thanks, Representative Titone, and thanks so much for the question. And it's a question I know that's on all of our minds. You know, before the pandemic hit, Jefferson County was facing a $12 million budget reduction. And so we were pleased to see the CARES Act funding come through. Thanks again to Congressman Perlmutter and members of our congressional delegation who worked on that. Jefferson County will receive a little more than $100 million, and we will divvy that up and also pass those dollars through to our local cities like Arvada, Lakewood, Wheat Ridge, Edgewater, and others. We also know that our businesses are hurting a lot. It's an especially difficult time. We're in constant contact with our local chambers, Arvada Chamber and others. And the Jeffco Business and Workforce Center is also here to help businesses and job seekers as well. You know, the pain of this is being felt across our economy. There's no question about that. And Jefferson County saw the single largest increase in unemployment across the state from February to March. And we're well over 10,000 Jeffco residents applying for unemployment. So we've got help for you through our Workforce Center, whether you've lost a job, whether you've been furloughed, whether you're concerned that this could happen to you. On our Business and Workforce Center website, we have job search assistance, resources for laid off and furloughed employees, information about stimulus payments for individuals. Our website is at www.jeffco.us/business.workforce-center. And it's easy enough to just Google Jeffco Business Workforce Center, and that'll get you right to it. But there's some really important resources there as well. In addition to talking regularly with our chambers, we also talk regularly with our local food banks, Community Table in Arvada, the Action Center in Lakewood, others in our mountain communities as well. And we know that they are stretched thin right now because they're seeing a decrease in volunteers, they're seeing an increase in demand, and it's extraordinary. And we welcome that partnership with our local food banks as well as we move forward. There are a lot of resources at jeffco.us for those of you who are in need of that kind of assistance. But we'll continue to work closely with our congressional delegation, with our mayors, our chambers, with you, our community, to be very thoughtful and strategic about how we bring our economy back together, and then also how we continue to provide those essential county services and programs in this new environment that we're all in.
Yeah, I wanted to just add one quick item that people should know about. If they haven't gotten their checks from the IRS, the stimulus money, they have told me that there is a problem with the Get My Payment page, and then it's been down for maintenance. So if you are experiencing any issues with that, not getting your check, trying to find out where it is and then going nowhere, that they're just having a problem with that. So try to be patient if you can on that front. Michelle, why don't you see what other questions we have?
I'd love to. I have a question here for Saphia. Will there be an extension of the enrollment period if the public health crisis continues without adequate treatment or an overload of the healthcare system?
Thank you for the question. So currently at this time, we are not anticipating extending the emergency special enrollment period that we have open for uninsured folks. But what I will say is that if you lose your health insurance through your job, that will also be a special enrollment period for you to enroll in health insurance through the exchange. And again, the Medicaid program, you can enroll in that all year so that you don't have to have a qualifying life change event in order to enroll in that program. And as I mentioned before, there are other life change events that will allow you to enroll outside of this current emergency special enrollment period.
Okay, and we have another question for you, Saphia. So if we are already in the exchange, but now our income is gone, how do we pay the premiums we have? Are there any grace periods?
That's a great question. So if you are currently enrolled through the exchange and your income has changed, I would recommend that you obviously report that income change so that we can recalculate whatever premium assistance you are currently receiving. If your current monthly income is zero, you would potentially qualify for the Medicaid program. And if so, when you report your income change to the exchange, we will automatically redetermine your eligibility and let you know if you are eligible for the Medicaid program. The Division of Insurance also did recently release a bulletin making it so that health insurance companies have to extend the grace periods for folks who are not able to pay their monthly premiums. So that is something that is currently going on as well.
Thank you. Okay, so this is a question for Jeff. There does seem to be a lot of folks that are confused about the difference between eligibility for PUA versus regular unemployment. Would you mind going over that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. It's a great question. So I'll start with the simple and then move to the more complex. If you're a traditional employee and you what's called a W-2 employer, you have a traditional relationship with your employer, then and you've been impacted by this pandemic, meaning the business has been shut down, you're on furlough, you've been completely separated, or even if you've had a partial reduction in hours, meaning you're working less than 32 hours a week, then you're most likely eligible for regular unemployment insurance benefits, and you should apply there. I will caveat that by saying that if the business is still operating and it's more of a temporary measure, so for example, if you are, the business is still going and your hours haven't been cut by your employer, but under the advice of a medical person, you are quarantining, for example, you may first have a discussion, you may be first eligible and more appropriately put on paid sick leave or paid family medical leave. Those are both extensions that were within the family's first legislation. And I should also mention that for regular unemployment, there's been extensions, so now you're eligible for up to 39 weeks should you need it. Again, moving to slightly more complex, if you are if you think of yourself as a 1099 worker, however, you also do some traditional employee type work, such that you have W-2 wages that are that amount to $2,500 or more in the last 18 months, then where you should start is to apply for regular unemployment insurance benefits. So if any of the things that I talked about in terms of your furloughed, or you can't generate, your gigs have shut down, any of those things, then that's where you should start if you sort of are in the combo in terms of your earnings. And what you're going to be asked to do is our system will check for the W-2 wages automatically, but what you're going to be asked to do is to present your 1040 tax documents, either from 2019 preferably if you have them, or 2018. We'll accept either. And then lastly, if you are strictly a self-employed person or a 1099 independent contractor, and you have had an impact to your earnings based upon COVID-19, and it could range from, simply all of your gigs shut down or canceled, or you're at home caring for someone that's been diagnosed with COVID-19, you yourself have COVID-19. There's a range that our website covers it very, very well. There's a range of possibilities. But if that is the case and your earnings have been impacted, where you should start is in our pandemic unemployment assistance online application. So I hope that helps to clarify. Again, it is nuanced, it's complex, it's a marriage of federal programs and state programs. So we've done our best to outline where you should start on our website.
All right, thank you for that answer. It'll be good for people to listen to later on. If they didn't get all that, we will have the recording up later on for you to listen to. I just had a question for Phil. With regard to some of the policies that have been going on, taking away some of the environmental protections, is there something that your office is doing to combat that?
So for those who want to go deeper on this, I was just on a podcast with Dahlia Lithwick, amicus, talking about the relationship of the federal and the state government. And one of the painful points, I know it pains our good Congressman Perlmutter here, is our federal authorities are not doing their work to protect the people of the United States. And that includes protect our air quality, includes water quality, consumers, a whole bunch of other issues. And what you just touched on, Representative Titone, is we have here in Colorado state protections to step in. And this is a two-front effort. One is when the federal government does something illegal, which can include adopting a regulation that is arbitrary and capricious, we as the state of Colorado can do something about it. For example, the EPA's methane rule that protects methane emissions from surrounding states is a crucial protection, and it's being lifted willy-nilly as part of Scott Pruitt's earlier agenda at the EPA. So we're in court to defend this rule that protects Colorado from methane emissions from surrounding states. More recently, the feds have said we're going to basically roll back all protections of clean water under the Clean Water Act. And this is under a rule governing the waters of the United States. Again, this is a real problem for Colorado. We don't have enough water. We have to safeguard it carefully, both water quality as well as water quantity. And that means we have to both challenge this federal rule that we're planning on doing, as well as think about what we do on a state level to compensate for the absence of federal action. So we in Colorado are so committed to protecting our land, air, and water. It's a core part of what we do in the AG's office. And we'll do that both by standing up to the federal government for illegal activity, as well as helping to stand up for Colorado, protecting our land, air, and water.
Okay. We have a question now for Jeff. My employer is reopening next week, but I still don't feel safe returning to work. Can I still get unemployment?
Yeah, that's a really excellent question. And the department is sensitive to this from both sides of the perspective. We're interested, of course, in facilitating and helping to get the economy back on its feet where it can, under the broad guidelines presented by Governor Polis, of course, with regards to safer at home. So there are going to be a number of situations like this, and here's what I'll say, is that what's going to happen is if your employer calls you back to work and you're not comfortable with your safety, it is what the department's going to look at. That's going to trigger an analysis by the department in terms of whether the benefit should continue or not. And so we're required to look at what is the employer presenting in terms of the facts, and what is the benefit recipient applying in terms of the facts. And so what we're going to look at is there demonstrable evidence that the conditions that you're being brought back into are in fact unsafe, with regards to things like social distancing, wearing masks, gloves, concerns along those lines. We want businesses to be able to reopen, but they need to be providing a safe environment for the employees. And then the second consideration, it's called out by Governor Polis, appropriately so, in the Safer at Work. He calls out the vulnerable population. So one, is there a safe environment? What is the employer doing to create a safe environment? And then are there additional considerations with regards to, is the employee part of a more vulnerable population, such that would create a situation that's unique to that individual and might not be appropriate for them to go back to work at that time. So the answer is, in certain cases, depending upon the conditions and the unique circumstances, you may be eligible to continue to get benefits, even if your employer calls you back to work.
Thank you.
Can I add something to that one? Because there's a component of what we've done on the federal level where there's tension between unemployment compensation and getting people back to work under the SBA Paycheck Protection Program. And there's a tension. The purpose is we want to compensate people who've been furloughed, laid off, for whatever reason, separated from employment. We also want to make sure that businesses remain intact. But the overarching thing is safety, as Jeff was just talking about. So there is some tension. We see these programs actually working. I was very pleased to hear Jeff's numbers about how the additional $600 is helping people get through this difficult moment. We know, based on the first round of paycheck protection payments or loans, even though it didn't go perfectly, several 100,000 Coloradans are going to be employed coming out of this thing through the Paycheck Protection Program, helping small businesses. But there is a tension here, but ultimately it's safety and not allowing this disease to hurt people or be able to be transmitted further. So I think that's the default that we've all got to go to. So thank you for letting me insert that.
We have just a few minutes left, but if all the panelists are willing to hang in here for a little bit longer to answer these questions, we'll just get to them and get those answered for everybody. So Michelle, you want to ask Commissioner Dahlkemper? There's a couple questions there for her.
Yeah. So Commissioner Dahlkemper, what do you foresee after the county's stay-at-home order expires? Will we see a similar safer at home phase as the governor has outlined?
Sure, you bet. And Michelle, I can also, if you'd like, jump to that other question as well that's related
Sure.
to the stay-at-home order regarding our cities and how we're
Absolutely.
collaborating
They're all
together.
linked.
One quick footnote before I go to both of those questions. I also wanted to mention that if you find yourself furloughed or unemployed or in a vulnerable position right now, the county also has resources for housing, rent, eviction resources, and the county has also created an emergency assistance page for those with income under 75,000. And this is not to be confused with the federal government stimulus checks. It's a separate resource. So it may be very helpful for those of you who are on the call or who have family members and friends who need to access those additional funds. Let me go first to the question about what happens after the extension is lifted regarding the stay-at-home order. Jeffco Public Health has been working very closely with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the Department of Public Health and Environment, county commissioners, the Sheriff's Office for Emergency Operations Management. And we will continue depending on what the data looks like. Those factors that I mentioned earlier. Jeffco Public Health, of course, will make this decision, but it will continue to focus on implementing and enforcing policies to ensure our community is following those critical social distancing practices, increasing the data available to visualize the impact of COVID-19 on Jefferson County, working to ensure that we have enough protective gear like masks, gowns, gloves, more for our healthcare workers, first responders, and others, and conducting investigations on positive cases. So our goal ideally is to align with the state and other counties, but the bottom line is that we have to continue to look at the data regarding COVID-19. Are we seeing a decrease in those number of cases over a 14-day period, for example? Do we have enough tests and data from those tests to identify those hotspots that we talked about earlier? As to the second question, one of the bright lights in all of this is the close working relationship that the Board of County Commissioners, Public Health, and others at the county level have with our local mayors, and they have been tremendous. We talk with them on a regular basis about these very issues, and I think that we are all in alignment that we want to decrease confusion, eliminate mixed messages, and move forward with one voice regarding what the stay-at-home order extension looks like. So we've worked closely and collaboratively. We listen to concerns and then move forward based on what data and science tell us. And the mayors have been a very important part of that discussion, as have the chambers of commerce as well and local businesses. And we greatly appreciate their input.
All right, well, great, thank you for that. You know, there's one question here, I think it's a good one to end on, and everybody can answer that. And the question is, what have been some activities you've done during quarantine, and what recommendations do you have for others? So everybody can answer this one, just kind of, you know, what you're doing while you're staying at home. Attorney General, you want to start with that one?
Happy to start. I really want to hear everyone else's answer too. My first advice is take care of yourself. Physical and mental health right now are really important. Take walks or bike rides if you prefer. It's beautiful outside this week. It'll be good for your physical and your mental health. If you've got family you're sheltering with, try to be good to each other. Show grace during this time. Find things that bring you joy and inspiration and do that. This is hard on all of us. We're leading an office, the AG's office, of over 500 people, doing it all remotely. We just did a pulse survey and hear what's on people's minds. And there's a lot of challenges we're facing. And so take care of yourself in whatever that is. If you like watching movies, hopefully you've got some DVDs or TV options you can enjoy. We're certainly trying to expose our kids some of our favorites now. And if you like playing games, again, now's the time to, again, just give yourself some grace, some slack, and do that for others too.
All right, who wants to go next? All right, I'll voluntold you.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Lesley. I'm going to voluntold you.
We've been, you know, in the evening, we've been playing a lot of Scrabble, a lot of board games, which has been really nice. You know, it's great family time together. And that's also, if there's a gift, it's that time that we have together with family. And we know too that it can be difficult for others who are feeling more isolated. But meetings like this and being able to see each other virtually certainly helps. One of the greatest things too here in Jefferson County is that we've got more than 230 miles of trails in our Jeffco Open Space Park. So we like to, as we know, recreate close to home, about 10 miles from your home, enjoy our beautiful parks, make sure you wear your mask, you know what to do, socially distance. There's some great outdoors here in Jefferson County, so we hope that you're all enjoying them and that we're all doing it responsibly as well. Big shout out to our Jeffco Open Space team who's done tremendous work to keep our public healthy and safe on those trails as well.
I'll go next real quick. I'm working on a puzzle. It's really hard. It's like all green. It's a Monet painting, and it's I haven't gotten very far on it, but I haven't had a lot of time. But I've been baking. If you follow me on social media, you've probably seen some of my creations. You know, if you're not going to give it to other people, be adventurous. Try something new and do something that you've never tried before. Because if you don't have to share it with someone, if it doesn't come out good, just toss it and try again. Social media is good for all the successes. You don't have to share the failures. So that's what I like to do, is kind of get out of my comfort zone inside in the house. Who else wants to go?
I'll jump. Oh, go ahead, Saphia.
Thank you, Congressman. So a couple of things. I have a 6th grader, so as you can imagine, there are many things that I have to do to keep him occupied. We do play a lot of board games. We do virtual board games with family members and friends. That's been a lot of fun. We also make sure to get outside every day, walk around. I like to run up and down my driveway sometimes to get that exercise. And I also like to do yoga at home. I'm able to watch different videos and continue with my practice there. And then just a lot of Zoom calls like this. I think it's really important for us to make sure that we are seeing people and not just hearing their voices over the phone.
Can I go now?
Yeah, please.
So some of the things that Phil said, been riding my bike and walking. We've started a thing called Local Heroes. So I'm like a reporter. And so, for instance, we interviewed Jim Spall from Apple Jacks, where they've actually been hiring people who've been laid off out of the service industry to assist them. And Dino Dardano, who has a business in Arvada, they came across a bunch of masks that they've had for some time. We're able to distribute. The Arvada Police Department, they went and serenaded a woman, Susie Montoya, on her 102nd birthday. They serenaded her up on the 2nd-story window. And then Andrea Flanagan, who has been taking pictures. She's a photographer of people on their front porch, keeping social distance. So that's been wonderful. And for me to act like a reporter is way out of my comfort zone. So I'm doing that, Brianna. And then finally, and I'll bet you nobody else on this panel did this, I watched Star Wars Rise of Skywalker twice last weekend.
Okay. Well, I guess I haven't even seen it the first time yet, but I'm a little behind on the movies. Jeff, last but not least.
Yeah, absolutely. Much the same, focusing on trying to get out every day with the family, go for walks, trying to read more. House projects have really been a lifesaver too. Proud to say my lawn's never had less weeds. So that's what I'm focused on.
All right. Well, not limited to those suggestions. There's lots of other things to do. Crafting and painting and, I mean, yard work. If I didn't have a condo, I'd be out in my yard doing stuff too. But thank you again to all the panelists for your great information today. This will be archived so people can go back and listen to it if they need that information. And all of our offices are open for questions. So please, I'm going to give my information, briannaforcolorado.com is my website. You can email me. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Very easy to find. You can contact me through any of those methods, if whatever you prefer. Does anybody want to just tell people the best way to contact you in case they have any further questions?
Sure, you can.
I'm on Twitter,
reach
Facebook as
us
well.
Oh, go ahead, Phil. Go ahead.
No, you go, Lesley.
Okay. You can also find me on Twitter and Facebook. Very easy. You see the spelling of my name there at the bottom of the screen. And you can also reach me via email at ldahlkem, DAHLKEM, @jeffco.us. Really look forward to answering any questions that you have. And thanks so much. Appreciate it.
And for us, can always reach us through our phone, 303-274-7944 and perlmutter.house.gov. And we've been doing something that's turned out to be quite successful in communicating with folks, is we've been doing a telephone town hall every Monday night at 6 p.m. And we've had anywhere between 5,000 and 10,000 people on the phone. Jeff Fitzgerald was kind enough to assist me one night to talk about unemployment compensation. It's been, I think, kind of like this, Brianna, where been able to call upon the experts and the knowledgeable individuals on these subjects to really, help people understand when there is communication like you're doing with this. It does take some of the fear away, some of the concern. It's, we're not out of the woods by any means, but the information just helps people ground themselves a little bit. So I want to thank you for doing this.
Yeah, you're welcome. Attorney General, how do people contact you?
So again, social media is great, Facebook and Twitter, and you can also email me. It's attorneygeneral@coag.gov if you want to reach out to us. Very importantly, if you know of frauds out there, stopfraudcolorado.gov is a great way to let us know so we can look into what's going on, protect you, protect others. It's also a great place for information. Again, stopfraudcolorado.gov. And they've got information how you do all that. Again, Representative Titone, thank you for all your leadership, getting people together. I'd second what the Congressman said, sharing this information and bringing together experts like Jeff and Saphia. It's really great to be doing that, and always great to be with Lesley, you and Ed.
Thank you. Yeah, my office number, 303-866-2962. Still taking calls there. They're being forwarded. So we've got that. And, one other important thing I just want to end with here, there's a lot of people that are suffering from this pandemic. And if you have any one that needs to talk to somebody, if you're feeling depressed or stressed out, substance abuse, anxiety, anything like that, the number is 844-493-8255 or text TALK, T-A-L-K, to 38255. And there's someone there who can talk to you at any time if you can't reach someone else that you care about. So that's it. Thanks very much for joining us today, and appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.